Good morning, Revolution, and welcome to our show this morning, Scott and Anita. Hope you're both doing good. Rosanna can't be with us this morning. She's taking care of her grandson. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the president's speech. We're going to be talking about the death penalty. Do you know that in the state of, what state is that? South
South
Carolina,
Carolina.
they're still
Oh,
using firing squads. I
okay.
mean, anyway, we'll come back to it. Working class issues, always front and center for Good Morning Revolution. And we're going to be talking about the growth in union organization and some surprising developments there, at least surprising for some people. And then that would naturally move over into a discussion about the economy. And then finally, there was a tremendous speech given in the assembly of the Michigan Democratic uh, legislature, or by one of the Democratic legislators, I should say. And we're going to be hearing a slice of that and talking about it. And finally, announcements. So let's get started. Anita, did you listen to Mr. Biden's speech yesterday?
I did, Joe. It was really discouraging to hear too. It was just, there was nothing in it I could really relate to as a person who is interested in peace in the world. It was just one boast after another about all the weapons that he's already sent over or that the American taxpayer has already paid for and sent over to Ukraine. Nothing about diplomatic efforts to really start a ceasefire, and just more provocation, provocative talk about the Russians. I would just it really needs to have the a break put on.
I was going to ask you, Anita, what did you like best?
I guess when it was over.
Scott,
And of course, going
did you
along with
listen to
that,
the president's speech?
what's that?
Did you listen to the president's speech?
I did not. I don't listen to speeches. But I
You
haven't
read
had a
it?
chance to read it yet either. What I did
Ah,
notice was, I can't remember if it was a day or two ago. There was an editorial that is from the editorial board of the New York Times, um, saying, what was the title? Europe wants to be independent of Russian gas and oil. Why isn't the U.S. stepping up? So, more of just along with the blatant kind of militarism and provocation that Anita was talking about, also this just utterly transparent look at the stakes of this for the U.S. ruling class and for the specific section that's the fossil fuel industry, um, which is, you know, this is the biggest windfall they've been handed in a long time. Coming right on the heels of promises over promises about a green transition and sustainable this and whatever. Now it's, we have a foreign policy that's um, basically just, you know, a little sticker with the word democracy stuck on top of, an oil pipeline. Uh,
well, Anita, I'm a little surprised as a college professor, albeit retired. The president did make an important announcement with respect to student loan forgiveness. You did hear that,
True.
didn't you?
I have heard that, and I've heard the promises made from his I guess Ron Klain and his administration also made that promise, and Jen Psaki also. So I think we can count on something coming down the pike before the moratorium runs out, which is August.
In
Um,
August.
People who do owe money on student loans have had a moratorium for 2 years, but this was a campaign promise he made, and I feel pretty confident that at least $10,000 will be forgiven, and perhaps some other steps taken to help the people who really just had are too far in. It's really crippling a whole generation of young people from starting their lives, establishing families, and so forth. this debt, that $1 trillion debt hanging over their heads. So I think there will be some relief. And yes, that should have been my favorite part of this speech,
Scott,
definitely.
they're gradually inching up on canceling at least $50,000 of student debt. I mean,
Good.
first they decided to uh, uh, provide debt relief to people who provided public service. Okay, then they postponed it. Then they postponed it again. Now they're studying it seriously. Doesn't that make you feel good?
I mean,
I mean, whatever
it
means
makes me
necessary, right?
it makes me I mean, feel good. I don't know. It makes me angry that after promising it and after, how simple of a matter this is, it's not like this would represent even a substantial blow to, private finance. Most of these loans are held already by the government. The fact that no action has been taken on them is ridiculous. But yeah, I'm glad that there's a moratorium. I hope the forgiveness in the end is more than $50,000. What I would want to see as an immediate, step along the way is to um, immediately like to make all the interest on federal student loans zero and count interest already paid against the principal, because there are people who have been paying and paying and paying and have wound up still owing more than they borrowed. Um, so this
Is
is
it ridiculous, Anita, or is this real politic in bourgeois democracy? I mean, they're concerned about the political fallout of an immediate cancellation. Isn't that the case? And so they're trying to build, I guess, they're doing trial balloons and they're trying to gauge what the political fallout would be. Isn't that kind of, don't you have the sense that that's happening?
I guess there is that immediate political need. They're afraid that there's going to be a backlash if when they cancel some portion of student debt. I also think it's part of a bigger process of making education, especially kind of liberal arts education and that kind of thing, less and less affordable to working class people, and really making sure that the those who are eligible for high paid jobs in the economy are really limited to only the offspring of the already well off, really limiting the pool, and really hindering people from getting a really good education and gaining power in the marketplace.
What point does it make to get a good education if getting a good education doesn't really provide you with any economic leverage? I mean, there was an article in the New York Times which was saying that union organizing is taking place, and there's been a big spurt in it, a big spurt, and that is largely fueled by college educated workers who have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, and some have been to community colleges, and they're mad as hell because they're not making any money, and they're joining forces with the high school educated. Well, I really don't like that division, by the way, but okay, just for the sake of argument, they're joining forces with high school educated workers, and this is the engine that is fueling the current union organizing drives at Starbucks and Amazon and other places. Uh, so what's the point of getting a good education if you're not going to bring in the bucks, Scott?
well, I think we have to, thinking of this in socialist terms. Um, there's this connection between college or higher education or whatever and economic security is not uh, a necessary one. It's something that capitalism has created, and it's resulted in a system where a lot of people are borrowing money to put themselves through college to obtain career training that employers actually used to provide. So employers have outsourced, career training onto people and made them pay for it. There's a value of study that doesn't have to do with, you know, um, immediate professional and vocational goals. Things like the liberal arts, as Anita mentioned, history and philosophy and mathematics and the sciences. These are the great collective work of humanity. It's the right of everybody to share in that. They've always been rationed out to just the children of the powerful and the wealthy, but um, they're things that merit study in their own right, and everyone deserves the chance um, to study them if they want to. That's how I look at it. So separating the training for um, careers and the education that's part of who we are as humans.
Anita, your students or former students who studied sociology with you, they came out, they thought they were going to get a job working in social work, or they were going to
Mhm.
get a job teaching sociology, a tenured track,
Are you not on
and they've
Facebook?
been made adjunct professors, and they can't get a decent goddamn job. And as a result, that they feel like they're getting pushed down further into the ranks of the working class, and they're mad as hell, and they're not taking it anymore. Good thing, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. They are mad as hell. And it's graduate student workers in Indiana who are on strike right now. They're mad as hell. They're not going to take it
Chicago
anymore.
as
And
well,
excuse me.
NYC, I
So,
think.
mhm. So, I think that my take on that article from the Times was not that they are the college educated or the engine behind the new labor movements, but I think that they are, for the New York Times, a surprising element of that new labor movement, because they didn't expect to see college students working in Amazon and REI and those kind of places. But I think it's an interesting development, and what they were showing, really what their article demonstrated, was that there isn't that college educated versus non-college educated is not a relevant differentiation right now. They are unified and recognizing that workers have rights, and I hope my former students are, among that. I think we try to instill in people a sense of fairness, and going after that fairness is more important than going after, the big bucks in Wall Street or whatever. So I hope they're there and taking good notes and writing it up afterwards.
There is one working class in this country, one.
That's right.
And all of these divisions, because they do consciously promote the division between people who have been to high school and people who have been to college. I mean, they say those dumb high school educated white guys and white women who they voted for Trump, but the more enlightened ones who went to college and got either bachelor's or master's or PhD, they're more liberal. And so it's a division between these liberal, enlightened, coffee clutch, mocha drinking, elite New York and California intellectuals, and the working and the white working. I mean, that's one of the things that they do. And but I think that's why that I mean, granted, I agree with you in terms of how you formulated the growing unity of the working class as a result. But they keep pushing this division, Scott, and that's a
Mm.
negative thing.
Well, and it also, you know, that division, the fact that the bourgeois liberal, the liberal bourgeoisie buys into that, gives the right room, uh, the reactionary bourgeoisie room to sweep in. And I read a great article not long ago about how the right has crafted this new image of the working class, which is a cultural one rather than a political one rather than one based on economic realities, one where working class means, white, conservative, and blue collar, uh, rather than, somebody who has to work to earn a living. Um, or somebody who has to sell their labor power to keep food on the table. And the guy ended the article saying, um, this is how it becomes possible for conservatives to say with a straight face that Donald Trump is working class and Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, who was a bartender, um, is not. Uh, and I thought that was a really, the right is able to do that and maintain this myth of the white working class precisely because of the because the liberal section of the ruling class keeps buying into it.
They also do about what kind of car you drive. Now, you're a worker, you drive a truck. I remember hearing this country song, I love you like I love my truck. I was like, what? What are you? And workers drive trucks, and the petty bourgeoisie, they drive a Toyota Prius, right? I mean, that's kind of, and,
Yeah.
and, and,
The petty
and
bourgeoisie where I'm from drive the biggest and most expensive trucks, but
is that right? And but the point is that there's one working class. It is divided. There's a racial and gender based social division of labor. That's
Mhm.
true, and that's why this union. But it's not so much by, and it's divided by. We determine class by relationship to production. You
Mhm.
know what you do, not how much money you make. That's a
Mhm.
really important thing. But this unionization effort is so important because it's forming collectives based on self interest, and it's bringing together black, white, Latino, Asian, college educated, not college educated men and women, gay, straight, uh, into a single fighting force.
Mhm.
And that's the only way that you can counter capital's attempt to divide us. Anita?
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think that seems to be why those union efforts in Amazon, Staten Island, for example, are able to achieve what they have achieved. And that the article went into a lot of those details about the people who are in that union. Many of them are people who are educated in other countries, and then they move here and they find their credentials are useless. I think there it wasn't. I mean, I'm glad to see that unity, and I think there is some commitment on the part of those individuals to the union and to the fairness and one all for one and one for all in facing the employer in a militant way.
We're in a new day. A new day is dawning. It's a very complicated new day, too, which is why, just moving back to the president's speech yesterday, we have to really kind of grapple with it and study with it and study about it and try to get a sense because it's very complicated and there are many contending trends. On the one side, there's this push for unity within the class, but on the other side, there are tremendous forces pulling us apart. Centrifugal forces that are pushing, and it's very destabilizing. Particularly around the war, and how we ought to respond to it. Um,
Hmm.
because some people are saying that the royal we, should provide arms to Ukraine. But my question, Scott, is when has providing U.S. arms to any uh, people or nation in any place around the world, with the exception of the fight against fascism during World War II, played a positive role?
it
I
hasn't.
mean,
And there's no. I think the fiction of a positive role is, getting thinner and thinner, right? This is, um, it's a windfall to oil and gas companies. It's a windfall to weapons manufacturers. It's a political windfall for Biden, who was, you know, there wasn't much wind in his sails before this happened, and now all of a sudden he gets to, be the leader of the free world. Um, there were air quotes around that or whatever, and so the idea that we're helping anything. We've been dumping arms into Eastern Europe, dumping advisors into Eastern Europe for a long time, and all it's done is destabilize things, promote the growth of right-wing extremism. Um, these arms that we're sending are going to are ending up and will continue to end up in the hands of these ultra nationalist and neo fascist militias um, in the Ukraine that have been, you know, recruiting white supremacists from around the world to their cause. This is it's not a good thing. It's not going to help anything.
But Anita, there is a fight against the Russian invasion in Ukraine. I mean, they were invaded, and it wasn't right. Communist Party leadership said it wasn't right, and we joined with parties all around the world saying it wasn't right. So, and it's true what Scott says. They go in with a rifle in one hand and a Bible in another,
Mhm.
and a big pot of gold to buy people off, and dope and everything else, and corruption. Remember Afghanistan? I mean, after all of the effort and money and propaganda that was poured into that for so many years. I forget
Mm.
how many years. I don't even want to remember. And then it collapsed. Streamed
Mhm.
live. On the internet and on all of the different cable and TV channels. So, but the question, Anita, is: so what do you do? How do you support the people of Ukraine who are fighting? For their right to have a free and independent nation, which, by the way, also has to include the unbanning of our fraternal party, the Communist
Mhm.
Party of Ukraine.
And the
Every time
recognition for the recognition of the
I
demands for
just
self
rage.
determination in the East.
Anita,
Uh, yeah, I'm sorry. Scott was saying something, but yeah, um, I think what we have to do in the United States is just really build our movement for peace in this country. We need to stop our president and his administration from sending arms and provoking more war in Europe. And I think we should encourage Biden not to push Finland into NATO, for example. It's just they're pushing things. They're being provocative. And I agree that Russia should never have invaded Ukraine. They're causing death and destruction. But we can't answer that. It's a, Ukraine is fighting a nuclear power right now. And it's a kind of a proxy. Well, I don't know. I don't know whether I want to call it a proxy war, but it's just our interests, the interests of the Ukrainian working class and our working class and the Russian working class are all being ignored in this process. But we have to first of all get our government to um, stop sending arms and instead really send our best diplomats and get some peace talks really seriously going.
meanwhile, the economy is shrinking, Scott, and they say that a recession may be on the way. Um, and it looks like the Fed is going to raise interest rates in an effort to cool down the economy. And I have a feeling that this election is going to turn on the price of gas. Am I right or wrong?
Uh, it might. Um, it's going to turn on a lot of things. The price of gas, the price of food, the sense of destabilization that people feel. Um, uh, I've just, I consider myself a pretty, politically aware or politically astute person. I keep an eye on the news, and I have a you know Marxist perspective to guide. But even
I think so
I
too, by
felt,
the way.
what's that?
I think so too.
um,
You're politically astute.
but I've been um, I've been confused and anxious and just feeling on edge and overwhelmed by the state of the world lately, much more than usual. And I think that's a generalized sense. I think everybody, even if they don't, always are not always able to explain it to themselves. I think there's this feeling that everything is sort of shitting the bed. Um, that this is the time of monsters, like Gramsci said. Um, and so that I think that's going to play a big role in the election as well. Um, but the shrinking of the economy, there was a fascinating article in the New York Times a couple days ago that said, "Oh, we took a look at data from 1948 to 2002, and weirdly enough, it turns out that every time like unemployment goes down, stock prices go up, and or rather, sorry, every time unemployment goes up, stock prices go up, and when unemployment goes down, stock prices also go down." Um, and so weird. Why is it that uh, when things are worse for workers, they're better um, for stockholders, which is, of course, the very thing Marx explains in the general law of capitalist accumulation. But they're trying to find this way around, uh, trying to justify that, which I thought was fascinating.
There has to be fight back during this election. And there was some hellified fight back in the Michigan State Assembly last week. Um, it inspiring by one of the women legislators. Can you roll that tape?
So who am I? I am a straight, white, Christian, married, suburban mom who knows that the very notion that learning about slavery or redlining or systemic racism somehow means that children are being taught to feel bad or hate themselves because they are white is absolute nonsense. No child alive today is responsible for slavery. No one in this room is responsible for slavery. But each and every single one of us bears responsibility for writing the next chapter of history. Each and every single one of us decides what happens next and how we respond to history and the world around us. We are not responsible for the past. We also cannot change the past. We can't pretend that it didn't happen or deny people their very right to exist. I am a straight, white, Christian, married, suburban mom. I want my daughter to know that she is loved, supported, and seen for whoever she becomes. I want her to be curious, empathetic, and kind. People who are different are not the reason that our roads are in bad shape after decades of disinvestment, or that healthcare costs are too high, or that teachers are leaving the profession. I want every child in this state to feel seen, heard, and supported, not marginalized and targeted because they are not straight, white, and Christian.
Thank you very much for that. Anita, the backdrop to that was that she was accused of some kind of child molestation because of some positions that she took.
That's right. Pedophilia and grooming and all kinds of things, and making kids feel bad about slavery. It is ridiculous. It was a very inspiring speech, though. I thought she did a great job, really just showing her outrage at the ridiculousness and of these charges, and it just the culture wars that are being waged by DeSantis and I mean, legislatures across the country banning books and banning math textbooks because they ask students how they feel about mathematics. It's and just what I really liked about what she just said was that it's really keeping people from focusing on human needs and the problems that we have, the infrastructure that we need, and that those kind of problems are not being attended to. Instead, they're in these culture wars, these moral panics. It's very destabilizing.
So we hope America is listening. Listen, America, to what people are saying. Wake up, take that napkin off of your eyes and those plugs in your ears. Well, we got some important events coming up. Number one, we have May Day. Happy May Day, everybody. We should have started with that. Happy May Day on Sunday. We have an event, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, and 5 Pacific. United, we fight back. And it's going to be an hour long uh, festival of politics and song and poetry and testimonial. It's going to be streamed on Facebook and on YouTube. The People's World is sponsoring it. You're going to hear from miners and you're going to hear from freedom fighters from South Africa and Swaziland. You're going to hear from fighters for peace and democracy in Germany and even way down under in Australia. We're going to hear from our comrades there. So it's going to be quite a program, Scott, and we invite everybody to participate. And then next week, they say that Lenin said, uh, without a revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. Actually, I think he got that from Plekhanov. But in any event, wherever it came from, our education department is having a Marxist school for 2 weeks. We're going to be talking about dialectics and political economy and the role of the working class and the fight against fascism. Get yourself a Marxist education. That's what we're talking about, Scott. Register today. Go to cpusa.org, sign up, and participate in a conversation about the science of society. And it's free. Like the May Day program is free, and and you can't beat a free education. That's what we've been fighting for. That's why we want Biden to cancel the goddamn student debt so that we can have a free education and contribute to society. Well, that's it for this week. Stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. We'll see everybody next week. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.